and welcome to episode 48 of the Racing Line podcast. Here on Monday evening, the night after the Austrian Grand Prix at the what is it? Red Bull Ring. Spielberg, the Red Bull Ring.
Yeah.
So tonight we're coming to you with a little bit of information about, obviously, our opinions on the Moto GP from last night's race. We'll talk a little bit about Sunday morning's race, which was the Iowa 500 that took place in St. Louis in IndyCar.
The Bommarito 500.
Yep, 2 races to go in the IndyCar Championship. It keeps getting closer and closer, so we'll have a bit of a deep dive into IndyCar as well. And then we'll also preview the second half of the Formula One season and what it means for the next couple of rounds of the championship. So Harry, Joe, thanks for jumping on. I'll say the same thing I say every week. How you going? How was your week?
Very well, mate. How was yours?
Phenomenal.
I'm just excited for some Formula One to be back, mate.
Yep. It's been
a minute.
It's weird. It's because we've probably said only a handful of good things about it all year, but when you lose it for a couple of weeks, you are a little bit puzzled for things to do on a Sunday night.
You know what else though?
Because even Chelsea lost the lead this week, so it was a very lean weekend.
I'm not saying anything until tomorrow.
Yeah, it might be a long
weekend.
It might be anyway. Let's jump straight into it, boys. We'll begin with the Moto GP that took place, like we said, in Austria over the weekend. If you haven't watched it, we'll give you the top 3. It was Pecco Bagnaia bouncing back again to take the win. Fabio Quartararo in second. When a little bit before halfway through the race, he was sitting as low as 8th, and was able to charge through to second. And then Aussie Jack has kind of found some real consistency and came home a close 3rd. So, Joseph, we kind of said that Pecco needed some help from the Ducati boys to kind of bring the championship back into his favour. Halfway through the race, the championship differential was down to 24 points, and then it kind of slowly crept back out as Quartararo made his way through the field. But what did you make of the race, buddy?
I thought it was a fascinating race. About halfway through, I got a bit worried when it looked like that the tire situation that Pecco and Jack had gone for seemed to be the wrong one. I mean, if you think about it, it's probably one of the better races of the year, to be honest. And there wasn't really that much passing in it. I did think at one stage that we were going to get a Ducati train that would really give Quartararo some problems, and even the Aprilias looked really good in the opening stages of that race. But sort of bit by bit, the sort of cards fell and people fell by the wayside. I mean, Bastianini was first with his serious brake fade problem he had when he just had no brakes coming into the
apparently it was a deflating tire. It wasn't even a brake issue. Crafer said it was a deflating tire that actually
even scarier, I'd say then. But that actually looked pretty scary until it somehow magically sort of pulled up just before the air fence. Because as he was going across the gravel, I was like, man, that's not slowing down anytime soon. What did you think of the race? Because I thought Quartararo put in a masterful performance that sort of speaks to his.
I think the first thing I noticed was traditionally Jack Miller is a hard tire guy and it bites him in the butt. So then when I saw the tire choices for this week and him and Pecco had gone for the softer option, it kind of just surprised me a little bit, because they always tend to be a little bit more conservative just with the way the Ducati operates. And choose its tires up. So that was interesting, and it kind of seemed to play out in towards the back end of the race, that the harder compounds we saw with Martin and with Quartararo just seemed to have a little bit more edge to them.
Even Zarco, if you were looking at his lap times throughout the race.
Yeah, true. But the most interesting thing for me, I thought, was we had that Ducati dominance in the first half of the race. I counted in that first half, there was 7 out of the top 11 were Ducatis.
Yeah.
It was just like, I think Mir, Quartararo and
Not even.
the
It
two,
was
and the
it
two
was
Aprilia boys.
the two Aprilias, Rins, because me crashed on the first lap,
So they were
and
dominating
Binder.
it. I think the biggest thing that probably let the Ducati boys down was the new safety chicane that they've put on the second straight, because before that, that is an uphill climb, pulling all gears to get to the top of it and then braking, and then all of a sudden we've kind of cut that in half and put a very nimble chicane through it, so that whole section of the track now has probably come back to the rest of the field as opposed to being like a Ducati circuit, because it doesn't have the same super long straight that it used to anymore.
I mean, they
And
still
then
looked pretty dominant though,
yeah, they did. I mean,
just
it was
not as
interesting because
dominant.
I think the whole race, Quatter was faster than the two boys in the front, the two Ducati boys. But with that with that bike, particularly when you've got Bagnaia on it, Quartararo can get to the back of them, but then getting past them is another thing entirely. And even the pass that he made on Miller into the chicane came out of
Ballsy.
nowhere. Yeah,
And
it was
ballsy.
extreme ballsy. Like he probably very easily could have binned it himself, but it was like that's how desperate he was to make the move, because any other part of the track just wasn't going to give him any yield. So yeah, I think the new track was interesting. I kind of like that it's got a chicane there, because it kind of gives a very simple track another element to it. I think I was even thinking it could even add another element to Formula One
F1 race.
if F1 was to race there moving forward and to use it too. But it was a good race. I think Bagnaia has done everything he needs to do, but unluckily for him, Quartararo was still awesome. So
I feel like one of the more unfortunate things in that race was due to Bastianini's tire deflating. He came out of the what is it now, the fourth corner,
yeah,
and he fully turned sideways, and Zarco, who was coming I think fourth at the time or fifth,
yeah,
had to take evasive action and lost about 4 or 5 spots.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like if those two bikes had sort of stayed in the way,
they still would have had
he would have had a much harder problem getting through. But man,
the other problem was the Aprilias seemed to fade as well, and the Aprilias were giving him a bit of a run for his money early in the race, and then they kind of seemed to fade as well. And we knew that going into the race, so we're talking their chances down pretty much all weekend. But once Aprilia started fading and he was able to kind of get to the back, like the fact that the top 4 for most of the race were tripping over each other as well, just kept Quatter in the box seat to make a move whenever something happens. So the most exciting thing for me is the fact that Bagnaia keeps taking it to him, and if he's able, like, there's going to be more races where Ducati does well, and I'm sure that there'll be races where he can kind of pull a bigger gap. But he just needs to keep going. He needs to keep going to bring the championship back to him, because right now I think it's still could be 40 points right now.
It's 40 points.
Yeah.
So it's still what, 8? It's 8 races of winning and him coming second, which I don't know even know if there's that many left.
Well, there might even be only 6 or 7 races. What he needs is to get a win, and he needs Quartararo not to finish on the podium. Yeah. And then all of a sudden if the championship's within one race, and then there's the pressure of falling, which kind of plays tricks on people as it is. If that's kind of there, then the championship's still on. And I think the fact that Aleix was able to finish, I think in 4th at the end, or 6th, kept him, I think maybe
30 points behind.
30 points behind. So there's still pressure from Aleix as well. But interesting race. I wouldn't say it was the most enthralling, but it felt long because it's such a short circuit.
It did feel
very
long.
Like a long race. 28 laps, but it took a long time to wind down.
Yeah. What do you think of the news about Tech3 and the GasGas branding coming on board next year? Because I thought it was about time that sort of KTM brought another one of their brands into the sport, since it's pretty much free marketing for them.
The interesting thing for me was like we'd been hearing for a number of years that Husqvarna was likely to become the brand for the Tech3 team. And we've seen Husqvarna in the Moto 3. I don't know if they've got a Moto 2 team, and I think kind of GasGas very quickly had the Aspar Moto 3 and the Aspar Moto 2 team. So it made sense for KTM just to kind of shift the branding to GasGas as opposed to Husqvarna, because they did have the stepping stone from Moto 3 into MotoGP. But yeah, I think it's cool. Like, it's always good to have a new brand. It's obviously the same technology as the KTM, but yeah, why not? Why not have
The one thing I'm interested in now is to see if we're gonna like, so KTM have their own Moto 3, Moto 2, Moto, and then MotoGP team. So it sort of has its own little academy. I would like to see though if the GasGas sort of family now will use that academy independently. I was hearing news over the weekend that about Remi Gardner and his whole seat situation.
He came out today and said that he's all but expecting not to be in the grid next year. That was from today.
I saw that. So what does he do moving forward?
World Superbike probably is the most realistic,
logical one.
Yeah.
Is that like moving from Formula One to Indy? Like, what's the kind of
pretty
comparison?
Much. That's exactly
it. Okay.
Oh, you know what? It's probably a better jump than that. Yeah, it's probably from moving from Formula One to World Endurance Championship. Yeah, like it's still. Hypothetically, he's young enough. If he was to go to World Superbike next year, I don't know what team he would be riding on. But if he was to go to World Superbike next year, there's some big names in World Superbike. Jonathan Rea, Toprak. The new Honda boys are doing pretty well. You know, the BMW riders are pretty established too. If he was to go hypothetically into World Superbike next year and win that championship,
he would come back.
Yeah, with Toprak being kind of he's expected to make his way to MotoGP himself. So if he was able to go straight over there and dominate, then I think he would find his way back into MotoGP. However, if he was kind of just to go in there and be one of the kind of cogs in the wheel, and was just there or thereabouts, I think that could spell the end of his aspirations for
would it be a better decision for him to go back down to Moto 2?
No.
Why? Because then he would stay in the paddock, and if he was to then have another championship season, he would be in the prime spot to then make a comeback.
Because I don't think
he's already won it though, hasn't he? Like,
we've seen double Moto 2 champions.
You can stay in MotoGP if you win it. Like, that's not a problem. Zarco's done it, won it twice in a row. The interesting thing for me is if he went back down, I don't think he would be on the KTM team, and I don't think he would win the championship if he wasn't on that team.
Why is that? We have not the KTM team winning the championship at the moment. We have the Asia Honda team leading, and we have the Valentino Rossi team in a close third. Yeah, there are definitely bikes to do it.
But the reason for that is because the two best riders last year both progressed out of that team. So they've got a guy that went Moto 3 straight into Moto 2 after 1 year. So he's going to Pedro Acosta's going to take a year. We can talk about him in a second because there's even talk about him going to Honda. So
what I'm saying is if Fernandez doesn't win the championship this year, does KTM then still push him up into MotoGP?
Well, Joe, this is my new hypothesis since GasGas came out with the new branding.
What, Jack Dixon?
Yeah, does that mean because Jake Dixon has won a couple of races this year. I don't know if he's ready for MotoGP, but if they are trying to start a GasGas Academy and they want to show the progression of a rider from Moto 3 to Moto 2 to MotoGP, then Dixon would be the likely candidate, not even Fernandez.
But why is that? He wasn't in Moto 3 with GasGas.
Because he's had a good enough season to make the progression, and he's GasGas right now.
The only reason, the reason I asked that is because I had the same thought, and my thought process was, Jake Dixon is the best sort of talent that's come out of Britain for a long time. in Moto in sort of
Since
the whole.
Scott Redding.
Yeah, literally since Scott Redding. I mean, John
Maybe
McPhee hasn't done
Kent.
anything.
Danny Kent, but even Danny Kent did nothing.
Danny Kent was a world champion, but he did nothing after Moto 3. And I feel like Dorna would probably definitely want a British rider on the grid, considering they've got like 7 good ones in World Superbikes at the moment, but nothing in Moto GP. So for me, that makes sense. But the only hesitation I have is that you would then be sacrificing, I would say, a better rider in Remi Gardner for someone who's not proven in Jake Dixon. And then they'll say the argument is Jake Dixon came from British Superbikes, which are very hard bikes to ride, much closer to a MotoGP bike. And he's won races in that in a very strong sort of championship. But I would just hate to see Remi lose his seat for something like that, where it isn't really his fault.
Do you know, like, it's interesting when we talk about Remi, because I made the point last week, and I don't want to just rehash old comments, but he won a championship last year being quick and being consistent, but very much being on the best bike. And with the bike that he had, with the team that he had around him, he deserved to win the championship, but he also was expected to win the championship. If he didn't win the championship last year, he himself said that his aspirations for getting into MotoGP were pretty much done. With someone like Jake Dixon, who hasn't been on the one of the top
bike,
2 or 3 bikes in the competition, for him to get a few wins is actually something to be excited about. And we've seen people from Moto 2 who haven't been able to win a championship go up into MotoGP and still be uber competitive. I mean, exactly, that's the point I was going to make. Like, Quattro was never on the top bike in Moto 2, and everyone kind of thought that his Moto 2 career, if anything, was a bit of a underwhelming. Like, there was questions about him having the credentials to even make the move into MotoGP. So the interesting thing for me is because Dixon is still a very much an unquantified resource, because we don't actually know how good the bike is. Like, he's obviously on an Aspar team. The Aspar is always pretty good, but I wouldn't say they've been anything special since, Aleix Spargaro was with them. So there's still something about him that has an X factor, whereas Remi Gardner, we've known his Moto 2 career for the longest time, and it was kind of just up and down until he got onto the KTM. So he we might know his maximum potential at this stage. And even still, this year, it's a learning year. It's a new year. He's the best of the rookies on a bike that's underperforming, yes. But even with all of that being said, with those young riders that come into MotoGP, there's normally the eye test. You have to do
something special.
Yeah, there's normally the eye test that kind of shows the audience, hey, this guy's got what it takes. And I think even though Gardner's had a good rookie year, there's nothing about it that makes me say, I think this guy's got it. And World Superbike might be the place for him.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, to be honest. I have to agree with that. And I think what was the last thing? The last thing I wanted to bring up. What do you think about the revelation yesterday that they are adding a sprint race on Saturdays to the MotoGP Championship? So you have qualifying on Saturday morning, and then there's going to be a half-length sprint race on Saturday afternoon, and then the actual GP on Sunday. What's up, H?
I found it strange that they're doing it every race weekend.
The reason I feel like they're doing it every race weekend is because realistically, I think they're trying to draw a bigger crowd on the Saturdays and have something else for the eyeballs on the Saturdays other than qualifying, because qualifying, I think MotoGP qualifying has gotten to a stage where it's a little bit stale. And if you, I think they're taking something from their World Superbikes offering where there's 3 races, but one of them's a shorter race. And what it allows you to do is, it allows the teams who haven't got sort of the tire life preservation to sort of mix it with the best in a shorter race, because they don't have to worry about burning their tires as much. So like you can imagine if everyone's able to strap on some super softs and go half length distance, you might have a KTM in the mix a bit more, or a few more Yamahas in the mix a bit more, or even a Honda, just because the riders aren't as worried about burning that tire as much as they are sort of actually getting stuck in there, especially considering the qualifying results. The finishing result in this sprint race doesn't affect your starting position in the actual GP like it does in F1. So I feel like it's an interesting idea to offer a bit more on Saturdays.
The only, like, my biggest qualm with it, and it's probably the same as the sprint races in Formula One, right?
Yeah,
I feel like with the whole spectacle of a Grand Prix, whether it be MotoGP or Formula One, is the aura that there's nothing about it that should be gimmicky. Like, it's just the best cars, the best drivers, you qualify, you race, and there's nothing about it that throws a spanner in the works, for use of a better word. Now, the weather might do something like that, or the tires that you use might do something to that regard. But I mean, if you're going to call it Grand Prix racing, for me personally, I don't like it. I think
But do you agree that the sprint races in Formula One make you more interested for the Saturday?
No, zero.
I love quali.
Zero.
It makes me more interested in the Friday, not the Saturday.
Formula. See, the thing. Look, we can talk about this for hours and hours, but Formula One qualifying there's the debate that it's actually more engaging for that period of time than a Formula One race. Like, there's actually a debate about that. It's like a very good formula. I think what Dorna have seen is that when World Superbikes have gone to the sprint race there and still 2 races, they've kind of seen something in that, and they kind of think like they can pick up part of that success as well. But I don't know. For me personally, I just want one Grand Prix race on the Sunday where the dogs fight for it. Because the other thing is...
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I think we're lagging. I did put a question up on the Instagram page asking what people thought of it. And I had a couple of people respond saying could be a good thing for the sport because it seems that a MotoGP weekend is lacking something.
I want to see how it goes. I want to see how I enjoy watching it, because I do have my one gripe I had with MotoGP is I feel like the races are usually 3 laps too long. I feel like by the end of the race, you're sort of wanting it to wrap up. And so to see just the excitement that a half race will bring on all the tracks, I think next year will be an interesting proposition to actually watch it. And if they were to say, yeah, it doesn't really work, we'll go back to the normal formula, I probably would still like them to take off just a little bit of each race, even if it just allows the riders to not have to manage the tire wear as much, because I feel like that's becoming probably the biggest part of the racing at the moment.
The thing that has to be taken into consideration as well, particularly in a 2-wheeled sport where people fall off the bikes, is that they're already in a MotoGP season that is shorter than a lot of other racing seasons. There's already a lot of injuries, and there's already people that are missing races and that are riding wounded for a number of races a year as it is. So if you're doubling the amount of times they're racing, now granted there's still practice and qualifying and they fall off like that too, but in a race it's different. If you're doubling the chances for them to have
You're just worried about Marc Marquez, mate.
No, I'm not. But if you're doubling the chances for them to have to go balls to the wall like 36 times instead of 18 times a year, and let's say that there are more injuries because of it, well, then the product is diluted. And
that's true. But you can also look at the way that they're saying we're offering 50% more marketing value to our customers because we're giving them literally 50% more racing every year.
If that's what they've said, well, then that's the reason. It's for no other reason.
They haven't said that. They haven't said that, but I just thought of that in terms of we're giving you literally 50% more racing without adding any new rounds.
What's the point allocation for the sprint?
So it's going to be half of the MotoGP points. If you win a sprint race, it's not going to go to a GP win count. but there will be a podium for it. So like you won't, if you win a sprint race, you're not gonna it's not gonna count to your GP's one.
Yeah,
It'll be
And
its own category.
then that is like that in and of itself.
sounds gimmicky.
Why race? Why race if you're not going to get a win?
Yeah, but
So
that's the same thing about
so then
the super sport race, that the super pole races in World Superbikes.
I
They
don't like
count
the
to
Super
overall
Pole
wins.
races, Joseph. I hate them too. But if imagine you're a young rider who's been trying to like busting their ass for for however long to win a race in MotoGP, and then it's like, oh, you know what? Congratulations, you won the sprint on the Saturday, but you're still not a race winner.
But if you were a young rider and you won one of the sprint races, that would probably be enough, in terms of like a boost of your talents to put yourself out there, and probably give a few people who are on bikes that can't maybe last the length of the full race before they start fading, like we saw with the Aprilis yesterday, to actually have a chance at actually a bit of the spotlight.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. Not at
You
all.
are a traditionalist. I'll give you that.
But sometimes I
You know
feel
what they
like
should actually do then? And if they want to do that, like if motorbikes want to go to a two race format, by all means do a two race format, but then do an overall like in motocross.
as in go two literal
Do
even length races.
two shorter races, a Saturday race and a Sunday race. They both count
Yeah.
for GPs, and then no, they won't.
Yeah,
The
but
overall will be
GP.
overall will be a GP winner.
Yeah, but I feel like that only works in motocross. Like if you had that in motorbike, someone would cross the line on the Sunday and not have the trophy. That would look a bit weird. Or you just have if you're gonna go do that, you just have
It's a
two
cultural
separate
thing. Yeah, you'd have
two
to change the
separate
cultures.
podiums.
Yeah. Listen, you know what? Why MotoGP? We've been saying it for years. Is the best racing category in the world because of the spectacle that it presents in that one race. So if it ain't broke, why make changes to something that is awesome as it is? No, I'm not a fan.
You
I'll tell you
say
one thing.
that.
I'll
That's
tell you one
annoyed
thing
me.
though. They said that from did you do the big MotoGP survey last year?
Too.
You.
Yeah, I did on motorsport.com.
Yeah, so their official motorsport survey, they said that it has validated the choice of doing the sprint format, because that was actually what the fans who voted in the survey, that was a unanimous decision to actually have a sprint race on a Saturday. So I feel like if they have facts and stats to back it up, at least in the first year, there'll be enough people giving it a chance, because it was actually the majority. I'm
Did you
all
say
for
yes
it,
to
to be
that?
honest. Yeah, I thought it'd be at least something that would spice it up a bit.
You're part of the problem then.
I love the Super Pole races in World Superbikes, because you get to see a few more bikes that can't survive the length of the race, like the BMWs actually push for wins. Like I feel like that in itself at least gives value to those brands like BMW in that, or maybe KTM if in MotoGP, that they could actually, even if they have no chance on Sunday, give them a bit of the spotlight on the Saturday to actually entice them to. It's always trying to keep brands in the sport. Just give them some shine, even if it's not an overall GP.